Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Forza Motorsport. In today's video I'm going to bring you, in my opinion, what is the best controller settings for this game. Now I'm still currently working on my individual wheel settings, but again, because each wheel is different, this is a little bit more difficult to do. So I just thought I'd go ahead and make a quick controller guide, as well that's what most people are probably going to be playing this game on. And I'd honestly say that sometimes it's actually quite better just to play it on a controller. If you don't want to go to the hassle of being sat in a rig or setting a wheel up and stuff, then well, controller's definitely the way, and it's certainly viable in this game. But one of the first things I noticed, the default settings were just pretty horrific. It was really quite bizarre. So at first I went through taking the assists off, getting it to the point where I didn't have any assists on other than the likes of ABS, turn the handling model to sport to simulation, and all the time it just felt like the car was kind of being artificially assisted when it just shouldn't have been. It just didn't feel quite right. It was just like something was constantly holding me back, and it kind of got me thinking, well, maybe it's actually in the controller settings. So that's what I did, dived into the controller settings, started messing around with them, and I feel like I've finally found a sweet spot, and it's mainly to do with the dead zones. They're just set relatively high in this game by default, and it really doesn't give you a very good feeling the first few times you're playing on controller, and it definitely is something that I'd fully recommend looking into and actually going ahead and editing. Now for me, I'm going to show you what I've personally set them to. I'll give you a basic overview at first and then give you a more detailed and slower look through. So the first thing you want to do is head over to the settings and go to advanced controller. This is going to bring up a bunch of advanced control lists. So you'll have things such as dead zones for the likes of acceleration, steering, deacceleration, clutch, handbrake, etc. Now, I will take you through these exact inputs, or exactly what I've got them set to, a little bit after. You're just going to see me kind of going through and sort of lowering each individual value. I'll get to the final values a little bit after. I do kind of want to discuss each and every single one. So the likes of steering, you've got both inside and outside. Now, I always recommend putting the outside just up a bit. For me, the sweet spot is anywhere from the likes of 95 to 97. Some people will probably run it maybe even higher, but I'd honestly recommend going no more than the likes of 98 and no lower than realistically 95. The inside ones, these are set far too high. I fully recommend lowering these. Now, you could put them as low as 0. For me, the sweet spot for me personally was around about 5 for these. In terms of the likes of your clutch and your handbrake, put the inside dead zones straight to 0. Since we're using a controller for these, the terms of the clutch and the handbrake, they're just a typical button. There's no kind of trigger feeling to them, so you just sort of want them on and off. That's why I fully recommend putting the insides of those to 0 and leaving the outsides at 100. Vibration, it is completely up to you, but one that I do recommend looking at is steering self-alignment. Now, I recommend, if you are in the likes of a front-wheel drive car, to keep them at a higher value. The main reason for this is that I feel like in terms of the front-wheel drive car, getting them to self-center is definitely something you're going to need to have on. Now, at default, this is set to, I believe, like 100. I recommend anywhere from around about 80 to around about 95. If you are using a rear-wheel drive car, though, I actually recommend having that at 0, which might sound kind of counterintuitive, but in terms of the self-centering, you don't really need it. I found that in terms of rear-wheel drive cars, if you've got the self-centering set to 100, the car will just constantly snap. You can't get that nice sort of, drift going where you've got full control of the rear of the car if you're losing grip and stuff, or getting a loss of traction. So I recommend, if you're in a rear wheel drive car, the self-aligning, have it at 0. If you're in a front wheel drive car, have it anywhere from around about 80 to 95, or even keep it at the default at 100. Those are my personal preferences for both rear wheel drive and front wheel drive. So with all that discussed and my reasoning behind each and every single one, let's go ahead in more detail to see my final values for each individual dead zone as well as overall settings. So steering axis dead zone inside I have set to 5. This is ideal for me. It's set at 24 at default. It does not need to be that high. The outside is 97. In terms of the acceleration axis dead zone inside, I've got this set once again lower at 5, as well as the dead zone outside I've got set at 95. Again, you can sort of change the range on them if you want. The high dead zone, the hard harder the push essentially, but 5 is a sweet spot for me. Outside again, 95 or 97 will do. Either of those values are pretty much spot on for me. Deacceleration once again lowered down to 5, as well as the outside sitting at 95. Clutch again 0. You just sort of want it as an on-off press. There is no need to have any sort of dead zone on that button. Clutch axis dead zone, just leave that at standard, which is typically set to 100. You don't need to edit that. Handbrake axis dead zone inside, once again you want it as a sort of press on and off on a controller, so set to 0, and have the outside again set at 100. Vibration completely up to you. Personally, I like to feel the vibration in the controller, so I've got that set to 100. And again, I've got this one based off of a front wheel drive car, so I'm going to run 85 for my steering self alignment. Again, you can leave that default at 100 if you want to, but I do recommend, if you're using rear wheel drive, just turn this off. This reduces the amount of snap. Again, if you've used a rear wheel drive car with no assist, you'll know that sometimes, quite often, once you get a drift going, the rear of the car will just snap back the other way and just throw you into the wall. Removing that sort of self-centering will then give you the option to sort of hold the drift out without worrying about the car just entirely snapping back artificially. And that is it. Those are my individual controller settings for all of the dead zones, the likes of the clutch, acceleration, steering, as well as the self-alignment, which is sometimes a great thing and sometimes a complete pain depending on the drivetrain of your vehicle. So hopefully this guide did help you. If it did, don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me. I'm going to try and make as many of these helpful little guides for Forza as I possibly can as I go through and sort of experience everything this game has to offer. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.